Evra, you can start now.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Markham Unionville Liberal Association monthly seminar. My name is Evra Trout-Peters. I am an educator with the Toronto District School Board and am also a PhD candidate in mathematics leadership at the University of Windsor. At this time, I'd like to introduce all the board members of the association. Yan, the president of the association, AJ, the secretary of the association, Hannah and Abdullah and John, who are board of directors, and Abdullah, Tahir, David, and I thought I saw Edward earlier on. Our special guest this evening is Kelly Dunn, or the candidate for this region. And like myself, Kelly is an educator. She has been a high school teacher for 20 years. She and her husband and 3 children live in the community of Kernel in Markham. Kelly is a longtime community volunteer, particularly with the Liberal Riding Association in Markham Stouffville, with volunteer experience on 7 different provincial and federal campaigns. Kelly has also been on the board of directors for the Riding Association for 10 years. As a teacher and parent, education is Kelly's top priority, and I can imagine that. Ensuring class size are kept to a minimum and providing teachers with the support they need to ensure all children are successful are Kelly's goals. In addition, Kelly is focused on improving long-term care in the province and ensuring that growth in Markham and Stouffville is sustainable. At this time, I'd like to introduce Kelly to give us a couple, maybe a short remark on herself. Tell us some more about herself, maybe something that I have missed.
Okay. No, well, thank you so much for having me here. I just became the candidate for Markham Stouffville about 2 weeks ago. So this is my first real, public event as the candidate. So I'm really thrilled to be here and so happy that I could be with the neighboring riding. I do recognize, well, I definitely know Edward and I know John because, of course, a couple years ago, we used to be Oak Ridge's Markham, and I did some of my volunteer time then. So, once we got split, the volunteers got split. So like many of you here, I'm an active part of my riding association. I was secretary, vice president, then president. Now I'm past president, so I'm still on the board. And I know how important it is to have an active riding association so that we can, flip these ridings red and make sure that, we have an Ontario that's compassionate and responsive and just really and fair. So, so as Evra said, I'm a teacher, and like Evra, I teach for the TDSB too. So I'd actually be interested to know what school you teach at. Where do you teach, Evra?
When we're offline, I'll tell you where.
Okay, so I teach in Scarborough. And I'm at a school called SATEC. I teach high school history and social science. However, I assume your math, that is not my forte.
No, I'm not a high school teacher. I'm an elementary school teacher.
Oh, elementary, you're doing yes. Your PhD in math. That's amazing. Amazing. Yeah. So yeah, I've been a teacher with the TDSB in Scarborough for over 20 years. And so obviously I'm a parent too and a teacher. So education is a priority. I know Evra mentioned in my bio other issues I think are concerning for Ontario, like long-term care and sustainable growth. But I know our topic here today is education. And it's really education that kind of propelled me to put my name forward. I'll be honest, when Doug Ford was elected, I was filled with dismay just because I know it's democracy, but I feel like the Progressive Conservative Party of old is kind of no longer. And Doug Ford represents this I don't know, American style populism that really worries me, because when you bring it in, sometimes there's a seedy underbelly to it. And I think we need to keep the door firmly closed. So I really did feel disheartened. And then straight off the bat, they start cutting. And it's hard to remember pre-pandemic, but there's some devastating cuts to education before March of 2020. In fact, that year, I believe teachers, we had 5 strike days. You know, and a lot of them were around class size. And it's a hard thing to understand, but even increasing class size a little tiny bit actually has ramifications throughout the board. My husband's actually an administrator, so he well knows and understands it even better than most. So the fact of the matter is, increasing an average by 1 actually increases the class sizes by a lot. That also means that there's that many fewer teachers in the system. And so I know there was one estimation about 10,000 teachers would eventually be lost. And I just, you know, I could not stand for that. And parents didn't want that either. And parents, I felt, united behind the teachers. The other issue that really struck me is that they brought in a new provision for high school where all students would have to take 4 of their high school credits online. Again, pre-pandemic, this whole experience, but I'd already taught summer school online twice. And, you know, that's an option. It's fine. I cannot tell you how fundamental to my core I'm opposed to it being mandatory, because I feel like the only benefit to online is that it's cheaper, right? It's a cost savings. And here we are offering a subpar education, 4 credits for high school. There are many students, and I saw that firsthand in teaching online summer school. Many students, that does not work for them. It just doesn't. In fact, I would argue most students, it requires a huge amount of discipline that you 14-year-olds just don't have. And so we're kind of setting up some students for failure. And I feel like over the last, like, I don't know, probably decade, I, as a teacher, have seen a growing gap between students who do well and students who need support. And this was just going to make it that much worse. So that to me was kind of like the last straw, those 4 online courses. Now they have walked it back, it's 2, but I still fundamentally opposed, because I disagree with how they're mandatory. We should not be offering this kind of second level education in the name of, you know, saving some money. So that's why I got in. So that's why education is always like number 1 for me, because it's really what pushed me to put my name forward. So that's the thing that I will fight for the most. Other things about me, like I said, Eva had said I have 3 kids, so they go to Markham schools. I have 2 in high school and 1 in elementary school. I already mentioned my husband is an administrator. And, you know, we're a political family. We're also very well traveled. A couple years ago, we took our kids out of school for 7 months and spent 7 months traveling the world. So we truly believe in kind of a global education for them. So I think that's enough. I don't want to talk too much about myself. Did we want to move on to?
Thank you so much, Kelly. I have some questions. I have questions from my union and from parents that I'd like to for you to address. And the first question is coming from the elementary, from my rep from ETT, and that's a different union from you, of course. And it says, current funding for education dates back to the 1990s. Former conservative governments continue to slash and burn so much that education funding per student is abysmal, falling way below the present cost of living. If elected, please enumerate the steps you will take to assist in rectifying this problem.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So, you know, obviously, I think we need to invest heavily. We need to invest a lot. And the number 1 thing for me, and I think for parents, is keeping the class sizes down. Now, the Ontario Liberal Party, I mean, we're all Liberals here, they're still, you would probably know, they're still putting together their platform, but they have released some policy on education. So specifically, the Liberals released an education recovery plan last year. And in it, they would pay for, I can't remember the exact amount of money, I think it's going to come to $1 billion.
$1 billion.
Yeah, class size to 20 across the board for at least 3 years. Now that is key, it's at least 3 years. The idea would be that to get the class sizes down because, and I know this is going to answer another question, to help fill in those gaps. Now I would argue that class size, it's the thing that resonates the most with people, because you can see how easy it is for a student to get lost in a class that's very large. The other thing I see, as kind of an aside, I see this, I've read about it and I see it anecdotally in my own life. there are parents out there who, when they can afford it, so there's an equity issue here too, are choosing private school. And they're often choosing private school now, not because, in days of old, it would be, oh, I have a really, bright student and I want them in a private school. They're going to private school because they have a student with an IEP or some sort of learning exceptionality, and the public system is not meeting their needs. And if you think about it, at the core of it, what does the private system give them? It gives them smaller classes. And so that's where I think we need to invest a lot of money. $1 billion is a lot of money, but for every dollar invested in education, there is an eventual return of $1.30. So it will, in the long run, pay for itself and then some. So that is one thing I would absolutely fight for, bringing down those class sizes, because what it means is that teachers can then spend the time on the students individually. They can get to know them and get to know their needs. When you have 30 students, it takes a long time. It really does. And therefore, you can't really get a great sense of what they need from you to be successful.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Now, I reached out to our community partner, especially the members in the Black community, so that you can maybe have a one-on-one meeting with them afterwards.
Yes.
And the president of MACA, her name is Lisa Joy Facey, and she has a question for me, and I think it came from parents in our association, and it says, I'm not sure if there is empirical evidence supporting this claim. However, teachers are complaining that the children have fallen behind significantly due to the residual effects of the pandemic, and I concur with her. What support will your government be providing to address this deficit?
Well, again, so I'm going to speak to that education recovery plan that was released. So the Ontario Liberal Party wants to invest 100 million in summer supports. Now, this was released last summer, so I would only assume it would move to this summer. There needs to be some extra summer programming, I would argue, for a couple years, so that students can use that time to perhaps get caught up. The fact of the matter is that students often, we call it the summer slide. The summer often students fall behind, and now we've had 2 years of a pandemic. So $100 million to support summer programming for students of all ages, I think would go a long way. The other thing is that it's not just that students are behind academically. We all know that there's the mental health of our students is significantly suffering. And so this recovery plan would invest 75 million to hire more mental health professionals and to be in the schools. The mental health of students is a health issue, but it can be rectified through the education system, because that's where students are. That's often where they're most comfortable. But, I can speak of it from experience. High schools, they'll have a social worker, but it's split between 2 or 3 schools. So the social worker is not there all the time. That's a problem when a student's in a crisis and they can't access that. So spending money to increase mental health professionals in the schools, I think would also help to rectify some of the damage. So not necessarily they're behind, but to try to help with their mental health, because students who have anxiety and depression, they can't learn very well. So we do need to kind of make wellness a centerpiece of this recovery. The plan also calls for 375 million into special education and student success professionals. So this would beef up the spec ed part of a school. So more special ed teachers, better training to try to work with students with those exceptionalities, because those are the students, I would argue, all students are behind, but students with exceptionalities are particularly behind. And so they need that extra support right in school. So summer programming, increasing mental health supports, increasing special ed supports are definitely the way forward. Another thing that the Ontario Liberal called for last year, so honestly, I gotta be honest, I can't speak for next year, is for the EQAO assessments to be canceled this year. And I think that would go a long way, because it's really unfair that students are gonna do this test, which frankly they are, it hasn't been canceled. And yet they are actually behind grade level, a lot of them are. So I believe the grade 9 math was canceled this year, but the literacy test, which is a test they have to take in high school, you have to achieve a certain level. It's actually, you have to get a 70% in order to graduate from high school. It's a diploma requirement. They have not canceled it. And in fact, the students last year, you write it in grade 10. So the students in grade 11 this year had to write it. And my son was in grade 11, so he had to write it. And the students in grade 10 this year are going to write it. I think that, first of all, would have saved a lot of money. EQA was expensive. And secondly, we can debate having standardized tests. Standardized tests do give you a snapshot in time, but is this a very accurate snapshot? I would argue it isn't. And so we need to cancel EQAO for at least this year, if not next year as well. So I know part of the party platform is to cancel EQAO this year. I don't want to mislead you and say they've committed to not next year, but that's something I would argue for.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And I think you've answered my third question, which came from Marco, a parent at Marco. It was submitted through Lisa Joy Facey again, the president at Marco, and it's asking you to explain how you plan, and which you just did, but just for the question's sake, if you could do it again, how you plan to address the learning needs of students whose parents do not feel safe about sending their children to school because of the risk associated with the virus and would rather have their children learn online.
Yes, so and that's a fair question. I mean, there's a couple approaches we could take. Is first of all, making parents feel like the schools are safe, because I get the sense from parents, a lot of them don't feel like their school is safe, particularly in elementary, because fewer students are vaccinated there. So spending the money on HEPA filters, I know the government started to now, but it's too late. I've had a HEPA filter for a year. But I've heard that some schools in New York region haven't, or they've just gotten them. Making vaccination easier and accessible, using schools as vaccine hubs, I think is a way to provide an equitable and safe and comfortable way for students to be vaccinated. It's pretty daunting, to be 5, 6, 7 years old and have to get this needle. We've used the schools before for other sorts of programs, and that way you're not having to get on a bus. You're not, imagine if you're a single mom who doesn't have a car and now you have to get to the convention center to get a vaccine. If we use the schools, I think that would go a long way to alleviating that. Now, the second part of the question that I would say is there might be parents who just are not going to feel safe. And so, what we have now is hybrid. And I'm sure if you have kids, you know what hybrid is. It's basically that the teacher's teaching some students face-to-face, and there are some students who are joining in virtually. Now, I teach for the Toronto board, so we have it, but only in high school. York region has hybrid for elementary and high school, and I don't know of any other board that's done that, I got to be honest. So that means that there's, for example, hybrid kindergarten. I'm sure you've heard of this, and that means that the teacher might have 20 students in front of him or her, and then 7 online that they're trying to manage, and it's just not manageable. It's hard enough at high school to do it effectively. It really is hard to engage and be together as a class and create that sense of community. So really what needs to happen, and what the Ontario Liberals were calling for, was a dedicated virtual school. So there are going to be students who, for a lot of reasons, it's not safe for them to go to school. They might live with a grandparent. They might themselves be immunocompromised. So the funding needs to be there, and that's what was missing. The Ford government didn't provide funding for dedicated virtual schools. And that is something that in this Liberal education fund that they would have, and ostensibly would if necessary going forward. My hope is that by September we won't need to have hybrid, that it'll be safe for everybody to go back to school, but that is one way, providing the HEPA, providing vaccinations in schools, but also a dedicated virtual school would have been a much better idea for everybody, and to make sure that the students who were learning virtually were engaged.
Thank you so much. And I've noticed that your answer to my questions have answered just about all the questions that I have, that parents and the MAC Association gave to me. Because the next question also comes from a parent in Scarborough. But I know that there are several parents that are very upset with this hybrid learning that you have spoken about. And this lady says that many school boards were forced to implement hybrid learning, and this model has negatively impacted, and it's specifically for the kids in the Black community. And they want to know what can you do for them, and how can you help the students that the hybrid model impacts, because you know how hard it is to learn online, and especially for Black parents who are struggling and have to be working and not able to to guide their students, those students are completely lost and they cannot afford to hire a tutor. So they want to know, how will you help them if you are elected, when you're
That's a really good
elected?
question. Yeah. So I know that in the recovery plan, there was 40 million earmarked for after school tutoring. It's interesting. I had a conversation with a colleague today, just talking about tutoring and how, the pandemic has been really, it's been a boon for tutoring services, but of course that comes at a cost. So there's this equity, there's this inequity there. If you can afford the tutoring, you can kind of fill those gaps, but so many parents can't. And that doesn't seem right or fair in a public system. So there is 40 million earmarked in the Liberal plan for that tutoring, and that would be for students who need that. Now, in terms of the hybrid, that's tricky. Again, I'm going to go back to, we should have dedicated virtual schools. So if there's students learning online, they're with other online students. And, online isn't, it's still hard to engage students, but it's especially hard to do the two, because you're trying to do an activity, you have to modify it for the kids at home. They know it's modified. You're trying to get the kids at home to interact with the kids at school. But then what I've ended up having to do is tell the students to okay, get out your phone and log on. And then they're using their phone to interact with someone at home, because I only have one computer. If I wanted them to work in groups, it's really, really logistically difficult. So ultimately, to me, the way to help those students is to have that dedicated virtual school, because everybody's at the same, and you can be more engaged. Because you're right, Eva, like parents who work, they can't be sitting beside their child. But imagine, someone who's 7 or 8, they need that help online. So you need to have a teacher who's fully kind of paying attention. Not that they're not paying attention, but that divided, when you're splitting your attention, it's really hard. You have to keep constantly engaging the kids. And the best way would have been a dedicated virtual school.
Thank you so much for answering our questions. I have a question from a board member, and this person wants to know how you plan to get teachers and other education workers to get involved in the upcoming election. And I see Marka has put in quite a lot of questions, so you can tell them how they can be involved in.
Absolutely, that would be great. Yes. In the past, Evra, I'm not sure how long you've been a teacher, but different elections activate
over 30 years.
Okay, yeah. So I've noticed in some elections, teachers get activated more than others.
Yes.
And often I would say the unions are kind of they not that they speak for us, but they help to get us activated.
Springboards, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So they can let you know about candidates who are teachers, or the policies that different parties are putting out, because not everybody follows politics. Not everyone has the time to. So I would say, I've already connected with the various unions when I was a nomination contestant, and I would maintain that. And hopefully through the unions, try to engage with teachers to show them how important their voice is, because when teachers have been activated, they get out to vote and their voice is heard. So I think that's like a powerful way, because the unions can also help to focus, not that all teachers only vote on the issue of education, but obviously it's really important to us. Some of us are parents as well. So I would hope to have a close relationship with the unions to try to get out the message about what the Liberals are going to do, but what the Conservatives haven't done. And, remind people that those cuts in 2018 to 2019, they were devastating. I remember it's so hard to remember pre-pandemic, but I remember just chaos when it came to kind of staffing times, because all of a sudden, for a while, we weren't even going to have guidance counselors. They were there was talk about laying off so many teachers. And we can't, that chaos is not good for students, right? The chaos it's too distracting. So having the unions to remind us of the chaos that comes from the Conservatives, and then all of this investment that the Liberals want to do.
Thank you so much. And I as a fellow teacher, I know cutting special education, how devastating it has been for students who are not able to, who learn in different ways.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, student voice is an important part of our system, because they are the future leaders of tomorrow. And this evening, we also have students represented on the panel, and I am going to be asking the students, I'm going to be listening to their voice as they report to you what their experiences has been with online learning. And my first student, if the first student, I'd like to ask you if you could tell Ms. Dunn, how has online learning affected your extracurricular experience?
Maybe,
Yeah.
yep, can I go ahead?
So yeah, there's Ethan, Ibrahim, and David. I don't know if like which one of you guys wants to go first to answer the questions, or
One could come and just introduce,
Yeah.
do an introduction to everyone on the webinar, and then I could repeat my question so that they can, if I've missed something, I could repeat my question so it can be addressed properly.
Hi.
Oh, hi there. Good
Hi.
evening. I'm very pleased to meet you. We
Nice to meet you.
appreciate your coming to this webinar because we know how important student voice is. We know that your future leaders and your concerns are important to us. So how has online learning affected your extracurricular experience?
So I partake in mainly clubs, and I participate in band. Band has been extremely difficult because it's harder to get feedback from the teacher. Alongside that, it's very less interactive, and there's less of a sense of community because you're not talking to the people in your band. So when you actually do play, it doesn't sound cohesive. It doesn't really have that same emotional impact as you do when you play in person. And clubs, I find that a lot of the information that's shared within those clubs is lost because it's all online, and some people don't show up some days, and communication online is not the greatest, and it always ends up being a very difficult experience to try and take part in these extracurricular activities.
Thank you so much. Ms. Dunn, is there anything that you'd want to add to what, and what was your name again? Ethan?
Yeah, Ethan.
Yes, Ethan, is there anything that you'd like to say to Ethan, knowing that he's the future, is our future?
Yeah, I know. And I was really involved in high school, and I was in the band, and it made high school fun. You know, honestly, my heart kind of breaks for, for all students, but maybe even particularly high school, because the socialization is so important. And, my son was in band last year, and it wasn't the same. He'd have to play a part, and then they would record it, and then all do it together, but it wasn't the same. And what he loved about band was that they'd stay after school, and sometimes there'd be a pizza party and all that. And like, that's all gone. And all of the clubs. So I'm the staff advisor for Model UN. I don't know, does your school have Model UN? Model United Nations?
I don't think so. I think
Okay,
maybe,
so
I don't know.
it's like debating. Schools either have a debate team or Model UN. And basically with Model UN, it's like you're having a pretend session of the United Nations. So students are assigned a country, and we debate international topics. And it's super fun. Thankfully, Model UN's pivoted online. So we have our meetings online, and conferences are held online, but it's not the same. It's just not. It's a fine stopgap, but it's not nearly as fun as going, we would go to another school and you'd get pizza, and they would all start to, I don't know, get each other on Discord or whatever it is the young people do. So I really, Ethan, I'm hoping for you that, I'm not sure what grade you're in. Are you in grade 12? 11. So hopefully next year, your grade 12 year will be somewhat normal, because I think it's just so, so important. And yet it's all been put on pause for you. So I'm glad you're making the most of it.
Yeah,
Hang in
thank you
there.
very much.
Okay, I have another student as well. And may I have that student's name? Can I see that the other student that's participating?
Hello.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you. And Abraham. Good evening, Abraham. Thank you so much for giving you and Ethan for giving time up to come and give us your experience about what schooling has been for you. My question to you is, how is online learning different from in-person learning? What are your experiences? Can you relate that to Ms. Dunn?
All right. Well, online learning, like it did differ quite a lot from in-person learning at the start. 2 years back, like when we first went into quarantine, because at that time it was like super awkward for everyone, and it wasn't really that easy. But the second year, it got a whole lot better. I found it easy to like understand what the teacher was teaching, because like when you're just looking through a screen, it's like a little harder to pay attention and whatnot. And at times during online school, I did find it like really easy to zone out or get distracted, because staring at a screen all day, like it becomes a boring at times, right?
Mhm.
But besides that, like online learning, like did have some pros to it as well, because I found it really easy to just like to be able to work from home, right? Like because I had everything I needed with me. I had like everything on my desk, and like the teacher just gave us a problem, and I found it just like super easy to work on it, right? The mental set was like a whole lot better at home, but then again, at times it was really easy to zone or get distracted.
Thank you so much. And I am sure that the experiences that you both have related, this is what most students could have experienced. Do you have an input, Miss Dunn, that you would want to, is there something that you want to say to Ibrahim?
Sure. Yeah, no, Ibrahim, I definitely, my own children have been home for some, but when they could be face to face, they did. And yeah, I can definitely see the zoning out. I mean, I think even all the grown-ups here, we've all been in enough Zooms that we've probably sometimes been like, oh, wait, what did that person say? So I can only imagine when you're younger. So I'm glad that you found it to be easier this time around. You know, yeah, the spring of 2020, it was all kind of a surprise, and a lot of us teachers were fiercely like Googling, how do I work my Google Classroom? And there was some very enterprising teachers who uploaded a lot of videos, which was great. Can I ask you though, Ibrahim, what about the social aspect? Have you been able to like stay in touch with your friends to like a meaningful degree?
Well, from my perspective, I play a lot of games online,
Mhm.
and I tend to play with my friends. So it was to keep in contact with my friends. But like, like if teachers were giving like our group assignments during online school, I found it way harder to stay in contact with my classmates.
Okay.
So
Right, because it wasn't necessarily a friend, it was just someone in the class.
yeah.
Okay.
Abraham, thank you so much. Thank you so much for relating to us. I have one last question. I have one last question for the next student. And is that student available?
Yes, my name is David.
Hello, David. Thank you as well for taking time out to relate your experiences with school in this very difficult time. So what are some of the things you enjoy about remote learning?
Well, of course, like Abraham said, we can just zoom out and play games, right, during school. But another thing about online learning is that it gave us flexibility. I mean, I can just wake up like 5 minutes before class starts in the morning, and to attend class, I can just click that meet link and then just hop in, like the Zoom link, right? And it also allowed me to attend class from any location of my choice, like in my bedroom, in my dining table, like anywhere. And additionally, online lectures can be recorded. I mean, like in an archive and shared for future reference. So that's great for me because I'm like a student who like to take notes after the lecture too, because I'll review all the concepts, which is much easier to look at the recording. And another thing is that online learning is great for introverts, and I feel like it's more self-spaced, meaning that we can get ahead because like we can just self-learn if you want to and just spend the class time like because, for example, like if you already know this concept and if you're in school you have to listen to it again, but as for online you can just learn other stuff that you want to do, like for other subjects we'll just learn ahead. And I feel like it's much easier to be organized on the internet, like no more carrying around multiple binders around school, and as you can just simply create another folder on Google Drive.
Thank you so much, David. Is there anything that you'd want to say to David, Ms. Dan?
Yeah, so David, I'm glad that you like the flexibility, you know, that works. And even a lot of adults have flexibility now in their job that they like. Can I ask you, or actually any of you, were there some subjects it was easier to do online? Like, I don't know, I wasn't a strong math student. I think math would have been difficult online. Did you find some subjects easier to adapt and some really are better face to face?
Honestly, I will feel like English would be much easier for me because I'm like compared to other subjects, I'm a bit like difficult in English. So like math was really easier for me because I can learn actually like ahead of time and all that. So it's really great.
David, I thank you so much, and thank you for telling us all about your experiences. So, Ms. Dunn, I have one last question for you, and I want to know from you. I'd like for you to elaborate. You've been talking about the educational plan and telling us all about it and all that it entails. So, I saw this term liberals education and partnership table, and I'm not so sure what it is and how did it come about. Is it possible? Who are the stakeholders involved? Can you tell us some more about it?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I know what you know as well. And I
Yes.
had reached out to the party for clarification, but I haven't heard back. This is my assumption that it was the idea that there should be a group of stakeholders and it has to be people. So it mentions trustees and teachers and administrators, I would imagine students, the unions. So
Parents.
it needs to be, you know, a collection of people in various positions within the school system so that they can speak to like, or like office staff, because there's issues and things with the pandemic, safety concerns that as a classroom teacher, I'm not going to know about. So to me, that partnership was about bringing together experts, including scientists, so that we can try to have a safe reopening. Again, this was published last June, but we can continue to be safe. So truly, I can't speak to more than that. I'm sorry. I just want to be totally transparent. But that is my take on it. The idea was like bringing in all voices so that we can try to make sure that as many issues are addressed going forward to make sure students are engaged and students are safe.
Thank you so much. It was such an informative session. I know your platform with the amount of things that you've planned to address. I know that a lot of Markham residents will be celebrating you as our candidate. Thank you everyone who has participated. I'd like to turn over to the president of the association, Jan, to see if he has closing remarks. I'd like to thank him so much for arranging the monthly seminars, and I'd like to thank fellow board members for their support that they've given to me and also to Jan and to this association. So Jan, is there anything else? And thank you, Kelly, for coming and telling us all about your platform. Is there anything else that I've left out that you'd like to address, Jan, or any other board member?
Yes, actually, there is one question from our audience, which is named Carrie, and she has a question. And for Ms. Dunn, would you like to answer it right now, or you can?
Yeah. So I see it there in the chat. Basically, Carrie's asking about supporting graduation in 2022. Many students have lost this rite of passage in the last 2 years, something they'll never get back. What would I want to see happen? Such a good question. And you're right. It's so important that students have missed out on these. So, you know, I had a son who graduated in grade 8. You know, at the time in June, we were back to being online, and public health, like a lot of what the schools have to do is contingent on what public health tells them to do. So public health seemed to say at first, no graduations, but some parents got together for at least our kids' school. And we had a bit of a drive through graduation, which was actually, I thought, really well done. You know, and grade 8's smaller, so you can manage it. We drove, we got out of the car, we had a distance picture, they had balloons, everyone got their diploma. So I thought that was really good, but that was the parents really kind of working with the admin, because a lot of what we thought we could do was the board told us no, because public health had told them no. So with the help of our principal and vice principal, we managed to have a little graduation for our grade 8s, which was great. And I'm sure you've all seen the little signs that a lot of the schools did, you know, this is a graduate of this school, and they could put them out. Now, high school is a bit tougher because you're talking about more like 200 kids, and it's even in some ways a bigger rite of passage. So I definitely think it's important that something happens. And in my experience, you know, between I've in the course of the pandemic, I've actually been at 2 different schools. And then, you know, like I said, my husband's an administrator. So I've been able to see some of the different ideas that schools have. And what I would like to see happen in this case is that the parent community get as involved as possible. What often happens at high school is, you know, parents they're less engaged. They are because the kids are older. But here's a place for parents to really have a voice. the school that I'm at now, the June of 2020. So I was not there yet. So I only heard about it. The teachers actually went to every single graduate's home and dropped off a little, I don't know, like grad package and a sign. I think they took a picture. It's not unified, but remember that was June of 2020. And I thought that was lovely. It's a lot of work, but it was so rewarding. And the teachers all talked about how much the students loved it, how much it meant to them that the teachers came in and dropped this thing off and made them feel kind of special. I know a lot of other schools are doing like a virtual graduation, which I like, but I would advocate for it to be live. I know sometimes it's a pre-recorded graduation and you can just watch on your own time, but I would like to see, if I was running a school, I would want to have a live graduation, which presents a lot of technical problems, but I think it kind of brings that cohesion, because if you just tape it, then everyone's watching it on their own. Whereas if it's live, you at least have this, you can kind of feel like you're part of something together. So that's what I would like to see happen. And I think a lot of that can come from parents really speaking up and making sure their voice is heard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And before we go, can we have a photo op first? So everyone smile and face the camera. Give me 1 second. Okay, great. And one last thing, since tonight is the Chinese New Year Eve.
I was about to address that too.
Yeah, so just want to say Happy New Year to all our residents in Markham, since we're over 60% of our riding are Chinese background.
Yes, sir. I was going to say the same. Yes. And also I wanted to point out, I found this interesting fact. It's the year of the tiger. I was born in 1974. It's also a year of the tiger. So it's time for the tigers.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so.
Is it Gong Hei Fak Choi? Is that the way you say it, Yan?
Yes,
And
that's right.
thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you so much, board members. Hannah, thank you. I don't remember if I acknowledged you when I spoke earlier on. Thank you for what you did. Thank you so much, and Yan, thank you.
Okay, one more thing. So for all the audiences, if you would like to volunteer for the our writing, just go to mupla.ca. Okay.
Thank you.
I have one question if we still have a time.
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, Ms. Dunn. This is Abdullah Taher. I'm a CFO for Markham Unionville. So as you know that we are in your neighborhood and we are looking for our candidate. So I just wanted to ask, apart from all this, that when you applied or showed your interest and how much time it took to finalize your candidacy and approval from the higher ups and to be a candidate.
Yeah,
just
it was
for
long.
our information.
Yeah. I put my name, actually, I put my paperwork in September of 2020. And then the party interviews potential candidates and you get a green light. So I got the green light in December of 2020. And then we had a contest. So there was 2 contestants in Markham Stouffville, and it was pretty much the entirety of 2021. We just had our vote, our nomination contest vote 2 weeks ago. So it was a year. I would say it was about a year for the whole contest. Now, some ridings just have an acclaimed person. Only one person puts their name forward and then they're acclaimed. It just depends. It depends on the riding, how much interest there is. But yeah, it was a year-long process for me.
Okay. No, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is the end of the webinar. Okay, I'm going to stop recording now.